on Stranahan selling out and now being owned by a Mexican company, being owned by Jose Cuervo, things like that. So reclaiming, I guess, that authenticity. Still Colorado made, and nothing's changed in the process in which it's made.
Okay, cool. I think we've already, just going back to the American single malt, how important do you think it is in terms of that category actually being becoming an official category in order to kind of reinforce that message, or do you think that that's just something that will happen down the road, and what are the repercussions you see coming from that?
To be an officially classified category with
similar
the
to Scotch and bourbon. And
at one point I think we were kind of looking at it as a barrier, but I don't think that it's make or break as far as category recognition goes on. Sure, it would help because it's something that's more frequently mentioned or touted, but I'd like to think that we're not letting it stop us, and how Rob is communicating the messaging on the road. The panels were there's a strong bond between the American single malt whiskey brands now. There's a commission we're a part of and things like that. So still efforts to raise awareness. I don't think it's make or break it, but again, because there is such low recognition, I don't know that anyone's really gotten that cut through to clearly explain or define it to the consumer.
Okay.
Do you think if it didn't get an official accreditation, we were just talking about this in another room over there, I don't have a bottle with me, I'm not sure how prominent those words are on the bottle, American single malt. Are they on the bottle, or are they?
So they are now on the bottle. Were you looking at the old stock bottle or the one with the flat panel?
We weren't looking at the bottle. We were discussing this, and I noticed in Rob's room that, the cask on the wall didn't say anything, the trucks outside talked about Colorado, you couldn't really see American single malt anyway.
No, it's a very good
even if you didn't get accreditation, would we be able to, do you think we'd be able to push that message up further onto the casks?
Yeah, so we just transitioned into a new bottle structure and new label, so it started bottling in June, July, and that now says Rocky Mountain Single Malt Whiskey, and the logo lockup is updated. If you go downstairs and check out the shop, all of our merch offerings have a Rocky Mountain Single Malt Whiskey lockup. This hasn't transitioned to the label until just recently, and it's phasing through all of the SKUs. So Original is bottling in that, as well as Sherry Cask, but Diamond Peak projections are a little bit slower, so we're still bottling in the Colorado whiskey materials, but for sure.
Hasn't made it quite to Rob's office yet.
No, not just yet.
How do you think, from a consumer perspective, how well understood do you think it is that Rocky Mountain Single Malt is essentially just a subcategory of American single malt? Do you think that's understood, or do you think there's confusion?
I think there is some confusion there, for the fact that if you don't understand what American single malt is, it's hard to understand this idea of sub-terroir, subcategory of category that you're not familiar with.
Yeah.
The reason why we felt it was important to define ourselves as a Rocky Mountain single malt whiskey is the anticipation that it is a flourishing category. Woodford Reserve just released a single malt whiskey, so that's the first major brand to come in and put a stake in this new emerging category, and we think it's only going to continue to flourish. When Stranahan's was started, there were maybe 3 or 4 other brands that were producing it, but as I mentioned, we were probably the only one doing it commercially. There are now 50 brands that are producing American single malt, so it's kind of with the anticipation that we think this is going to grow, and we notice that our competitors, for instance, Westland is constantly talking about Pacific Northwest provenance, right? And they're a PNW single malt. Balcones is in Texas, and they talk all about provenance, and they're kind of defining themselves as Texas single malt. So that was kind of a category or a region we wanted to stake ownership in, in anticipation of that growth.
Cool. That's great. So how well do you think that the existing marketing materials that you have in terms of packaging, social, stuff like that, how well do you think that they're performing at the moment, and where do you think there might be room for improvement?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the fact is, with the materials not fully transitioning to American single malt messaging or Rocky Mountain single malt messaging, there's a bit of a disconnect because we talk about it, for instance, in copy across social comms, but the materials or the content itself doesn't really clearly communicate it.
Okay.
So I think dialing that up needs to be done. As far as PR goes, it's pretty tight messaging on the American single malt piece. Focusing it on, I'd say explaining it to the consumer in a way that doesn't seem that technical is important, because again, it feels like we're kind of talking to ourselves, and I don't know how often your everyday consumer, your everyday guy is reading like Forbes and really wants to read into the nitty gritty of the legal classification of an American whiskey or let alone an American single malt. Yeah. So definitely improvement, I think, again, to make it a bit more conversational and easy to understand across the comms piece. The materials are evolving into American single malt, but it's been a bit of a slow start. It's almost like cart leading the horse, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you aware that you use, or do you have any connection with Any Road, the guys that run your ticketing system?
I don't work with them, but I
You're aware of them?
Yeah.
So you don't have any real communication, or you don't get any data from the Any Road system at all?
I have visibility into their platform. I think they have like a live platform to check stats. So I've had to go in a couple of times this last year to pull, just based on seeing where we're at year to date and comparison and some demo info.
And is that like spend and amount of people on tours, that sort of information? Data?
Yes. I mean, I know that. Actually, I don't know if it's visible on the platform or if it's more so just metrics on sales and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's not. I don't have total visibility into it.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Last question. If you could describe Stranahan's in a single sentence, how would you describe it?
Oh, wow. Sorry, I'm trying to overcome the jet lag.
Where did you come from today?
I was in Jersey, but I had an early flight in. Yeah.
Oh, did you? What time?
7 a.m. So.
And what's the time difference between there and here?
2 hours ahead.
Right. Okay.
It's all good.
You're ready.
Sorry if I'm a little foggy.
Yeah, not at all. You're very clear.
Stranahan's in a word.
Sentence.
Yeah, sorry.
That might be too complicated.
Awesome. I'd say Stranahan's is a Colorado-born whiskey making single malt unlike anything east or west of the Rockies.
Great. Well, that's not a foggy answer at all. Okay, that's it for us.
Cool.
So thanks so much.
Cool, yeah, thank you guys
for taking the time to chat with us.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. So, any more interviews to go today, or
our last
I don't know. I was completely out of the loop.
Yeah, you just got to the Coors Brewery tour.
You got the booby prize of me being in an interview thing. I thought I was coming back for a completely different thing.
No.
Do you think that's going to happen or not?
I don't know. It depends if Rodrigo's still here. I'm not sure if he is.
Cool.
So yeah, that was us.
So you're around for tonight as well?
I'm here tonight.